All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this or that college edition. So the first thing that we sort of just wanted to cover was the difference between research universities and liberal arts colleges. I know when I was first going through the college application process, I did not know anything about these two, and it's pretty hard to find the information for these. So I hope this will help you guys in some way. So first thing is, what is a research university? So research universities are typically sort of more of like the big name universities that you hear. These are like the Harvard universities, University of Washington, UMich, UC Berkeley. Basically, any university that you probably heard of is most likely a research university. These are universities that are committed to research as a central part of their mission. So a lot of times the professors and faculty working at these schools are also doing research alongside teaching their undergraduate students. A research university is a lot more focused on specific fields of study and gives students access to top experts in the latest research in their fields. These schools can also be public or private schools. As you can see, we have Harvard on the list, which is a private school, and University of Washington, which is a public school. Some characteristics of a research university. These schools have typically have very large student bodies. Some of these schools have over 30,000 students within them, so they can be pretty big. And a benefit of this is that you typically get a very strong alumni network as a part of going to a research university. Whether that's students that have gone there in the past or your fellow classmates, you have a strong alumni network to reach out to once you graduate or while you're at that school to reach out to for jobs or any other opportunities you may be looking for. Research universities also typically have a very large campus as there's different buildings dedicated to sort of the research that they do. An example of this is the University of Southern California. They sort of have different buildings for all of their different schools, like the Marshall School of Business has their own building, the Viterbi School of Engineering has their own building. So you have a lot of resources available there at these schools. Another characteristic of this is sort of a research university is that they can be pretty competitive. I sort of like to call it like the little fish in a big pond type of syndrome, as there's a pretty large school and sometimes you can feel sort of lost within it because everyone's sort of competing for the same thing, trying to be the best that they can be. So it can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming. Another really important aspect of research university is that you typically get the opportunity to conduct research with very notable alumni and faculty, as these professors at these school and some of the alumni from these school are some of the top experts in their field of study. To go over some of the pros and cons of a research university, some pros, as I mentioned before, is the opportunity to network with alumni, researchers, and faculty in your desired field. You can really gain very strong and valuable connections at research universities. And as I mentioned before, they have a very large campus, and with a large campus comes lots of opportunities, whether that's in research, extracurriculars, intramural sports, or anything that you're really looking for. A research university will probably have it, especially in terms of extracurricular opportunities. Most of these schools sort of have a website where you can go through and look at their variety of different extracurricular opportunities, and really if you're looking for something you'll probably be able to find it at these schools. They also have a very large and diverse student body, so there's a lot of different people there from a wide variety of different experiences that will really facilitate a period of personal growth both for you and for them, and just sort of show you a whole new world that you may not have experienced in your own hometown. Another good pro of research universities is in terms of their academics, you can be very specific in what you want to do. They have a lot of different academic offerings, which really allows you to fine tune your major, especially for like some of the bigger majors, like let's say biomedical engineering. You might be able to find an opportunity at a research university, sort of narrow down your research, or I guess your academics into something that you really want to do, whether that's nanotechnology or genetic engineering. You really be able to fine tune what you want to look for at these research universities. Some cons of these schools, though, is that they're pretty big in terms of physically. They have a pretty large campus as well as having a pretty big student body. And sometimes this can feel a little bit overwhelming and isolating, but not always. And oftentimes these have a really big class sizes. So these can be sort of like your intro classes, like intro to econ, intro to government. These can be pretty big lecture hall classes, which can range anywhere from around 50 to sort of like maybe even 300 more people, just depending on how big your school is. And sometimes these schools can suffer from GPA inflation or deflation. And sort of what this means is that your GPA isn't what it would normally be, if that makes sense. So GPA inflation means your grade may not reflect the actual difficulty of a class. You may see a lot of kids with A's. And GPA deflation means that your GPA is actually a lot worse than what the difficulty of the class is, if that makes sense. So you might see kids with lower GPAs than you would expect them to have. So now let's dive into what a liberal arts college is. So these schools, oftentimes kids don't really hear about them unless you're really looking for them. These are a lot smaller schools, sort of like Swarthmore College, Smith, Barnard, Pomona, Amherst. There's so many different liberal arts colleges, and they offer a very unique experience. Liberal arts colleges and liberal arts institutions are typically colleges with an emphasis on undergraduate study in the liberal arts and sciences. These schools are primarily private institutions, and there are not very many public liberal arts colleges. And the big difference between a liberal arts college and a research university is that liberal arts colleges are a lot more focused on undergraduate study. So typically you'll only find undergraduate students there. So it's a lot smaller, and the professors are a lot more focused on teaching their undergraduate students rather than focusing on research like they would be at a research school. In terms of some of the characteristics of a liberal arts colleges, these schools are oftentimes very small. I know Swarthmore College, I think, has only 1,000 students in their entire student body. So they offer a much different experience than a research university with like 30,000 kids might have. These schools typically only offer degrees at the undergraduate level. So like while University of Washington might have their graduate school of business, typically liberal arts colleges won't have a graduate school like that. So they only focus on undergraduate education rather than having graduate degree programs like MBAs, MDs, Juris Doctors, things like that. And these schools typically have can have a large campus, kind of like what the other schools do, but they won't have as many students within them because it's a smaller student body. And a really important aspect of liberal arts colleges is that you can really develop much closer connections with professors. These are very small class sizes, so you really get a lot of time one-on-one with these professors. These can also offer very unique / niche experiences that a research university might not be able to offer you. An example of this is sort of like the Seven Sister Schools. If you've never heard of the Seven Sister Schools, they're sort of a group of private liberal arts colleges, private women's liberal arts colleges, sort of, I think Barnard and Smith are a few that I know off the top of my head. So if that's something that you're looking for, you can look for that as well. To go break down some of the pros and cons of liberal arts colleges, some of the pros is that they have a very small student body. This is a little less overwhelming. So unlike a research university, which is huge in terms of student body and campus size, these schools are a lot smaller and they don't feel as competitive as a research university might be. The professors here are more focused on teaching rather than research. So at a research university, a big aspect of their mission is research. At a liberal arts college, that's typically not the case. So these professors are a lot more focused on teaching their undergraduate students and spending a lot more time one-on-one in their coursework with them. Liberal arts colleges also offer very flexible curriculum. If there's something very unique that you want to study, you could probably do that at a liberal arts college. Liberal arts colleges also oftentimes pride themselves in being able to provide a very enriching experience for students. They sort of, I guess, highlight their personal enrichment that occurs at these schools. Since it's a lot smaller student body, you'll probably develop closer relationship with your peers. I know for me, like my school had around like 2,000 kids in it. So it was like pretty big, but I know if I wanted to go to a school like Swarthmore that only had 1,000 kids, so I'd be able to develop a lot more closer relationship with my peers because I won't have as many kids in my school, and I'll be able to see them a lot more one-on-one than I would at a big research university. Some cons of these schools, though, is typically the location is pretty isolated, though they may have a college town nearby or a big city nearby. I know Swarthmore, which is located in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, is in a pretty small town. It's about like an hour away from Pennsylvania, I think. So sometimes it can feel a little isolated, but you'll also have a strong support system there with the student body and the faculty there to support you. But I do know some research universities are also pretty isolated as well, like Washington State University in Pullman, Washington is sort of on the eastern side of Washington, not really close to anything. But since it's such a big school, it doesn't feel as isolated as a liberal arts college would. Another con is that there's oftentimes less extracurriculars to choose from than you would at a research university, but I'm sure if there's something that you want at your school, you'll probably be able to start it or find someone that is also shares the similar interests. Another con is that sometimes these schools can feel a little too small, as in you'll see the same people over and over again, and sometimes it can feel a little bit like high school in terms of that you'll always see the same people consistently. But if that's something that you're looking for, then that's honestly like that's the best fit for you. And in terms of the advice that I can offer between picking a research or liberal arts university, you just really want to look for, I guess, sort of what is the best fit for you academically and mentally. You want to be able to envision yourself there as a part of the student body, and be able to find a school that offers the things that'll suit your personal and professional goals in terms of academics. The next thing that we want to break down is sort of different college application platforms. There's so many different college application platforms that you're going throughout the college application process. It can be a little confusing trying to pick one. The main three I sort of wanted to highlight were the Common App, the Coalition App, or the QuestBridge National College Match. I'm pretty sure all of these are open now. So first, let's start off with the Common App. So the Common Application is probably the most popular college application platform. It's probably what almost everyone is using, as over 800 plus schools are on here. Almost every school is on here. And they offer far more personal essay prompts to choose from because they have, I think, 7 essay prompts to be able to choose from. And the prompts remain the same from year to year. So you'll be able to start a lot earlier if you'd like. And they give you a lot more room to expand in your personal essay than you do with the Coalition application. As the Common App gives you, I think, 650 words, while the Coalition app gives you 550 words. And one of the benefits, at least that I found with the Common App, it's a very efficient and powerful platform, as it's very streamlined, as you're able to bounce back and forth between the different sections of the Common App and not really have to worry about it too much. So now let's go into the Coalition App. So the Coalition App is a lot smaller, as there's a lot less schools on the Coalition. I think only 140 schools are on the Coalition App this year. But it's important to keep in mind that some schools are only on the Coalition application. So if you're interested in the University of Washington or Clemson University, those schools are only on the Coalition app. I'm sure there's a few more, but those are just the ones that I know off the top of my head. The user interface on the Coalition app is a little bit more difficult to navigate, as unlike the Common application, where you're able to bounce back and forth between your activities and, like, let's say your academics, like being able to put your GPA and everything. The Coalition app is sort of something that, like, you have to fill out a section, and before you're able to move on to the next one, you have to complete that section. And it's sort of a lot back and forth rather than being able to just switch easily between the two sections. They have much more limited personal essay prompts, as I believe they only have one personal essay that you can look at, one personal essay prompt that you can work with, and it's also only 550 words in comparison to the 650 words offered in the Common App. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then going into the QuestBridge application, the QuestBridge National College Match is designed for first-generation low-income student. Typically, QuestBridge advertises itself as a pathway to a top college with a full 4-year scholarship. But one thing to keep in mind is that the QuestBridge National College Match is a highly competitive college application platform. It's not like oh, excuse me, my bad. Okay. Sorry about that. I just got a quick call on accident. So the QuestBridge National College Match is a very highly competitive college application platform. So rather than being sort of like the Common App, where you sort of just send your application to the colleges, you have to sort of apply to become a National College Match finalist at first. So only 39% of students who apply become finalists, and after you become a finalist, you have to apply to match to a certain school. There are 42 different partner colleges, and only 13% of students actually become matched to a school. So it's a pretty competitive application process, but well worth it if you're interested in it. And one thing that I think is a great benefit of the QuestBridge application is that it's a really good opportunity to show aspects of yourself that you're not able to through the Common App or Coalition app. Since the QuestBridge application was designed with FGLI students in mind, they give you essay prompts that really allow you to show, I guess, your economic situation or sort of your upbringing, and just really be able to highlight that to colleges. In terms of picking which college application platform you want to go on, it really all just depends on which schools are on the platforms that you're looking for. So let's say you want to apply to 5 schools total, and 3 of them are only on the Coalition app, and the other 2 are only on the Common App, but also the Coalition app. I'd probably say go for the Coalition app just to save yourself the trouble of having to put in the information 2 different times. It's just pretty easier that way. I personally did the Common App just because I applied to a lot more schools that were on the Common App, and I just preferred the personal essay prompts that way. So this sort of just covers it. You just really want to curate a list of the schools they're planning on applying to and find which platform they're most on. Another important aspect is you want to make sure that you're reading the essay prompts and choose the platform that allows you to highlight your best characteristics. You just really want to go through the different essay prompts on the Coalition app, the Common App, the QuestBridge app, and just really see, I guess, which one resonates with you more. Which essay prompts do you think will allow you to really express yourself and show yourself in a way that others wouldn't? An important thing to take note about QuestBridge is that QuestBridge advertises itself as sort of like a full ride to their partner colleges. But many of the QuestBridge partner schools offer generous financial aid packages outside of QuestBridge. So if you decide not to do QuestBridge, just look into sort of with the financial aid packages, look at these different schools that you're interested in. And I'm sure you'll be able to find a really great financial aid offering at these schools outside of QuestBridge as well. The next thing that we sort of want to break down is the difference between early action, early decision 1 and 2, or regular decision. So the first thing is just what is early decision 1 and 2? So early decision 1 is typically the earliest college application deadline out of the 4. This is typically November 1st, though some schools are changing this due to COVID, or they are completely opting out of it at all. So just make sure you're looking on the college's website to see if they're still offering it. Think about early decision is that early decision is binding. If you're accepted to the school, you must go. So like if you apply to, let's say, Princeton, early decision, then you have to go to Princeton. You can't apply to a different school. The only way that this would change, that you'd be able to advocate for yourself not to go to the school, is if you're unable to afford it. But typically they give you a pretty good financial aid package to be able to go. A thing about early decision is that you can only apply to one school, early decision 1, so you can't apply to like 5 different schools. Early decision, you can only apply to one school. And then ED2 is basically the same thing as early decision 1, except the deadline is just January 1st. So it's just a little bit later. So in terms of deciding if you want to do ED1 or ED2, I'd say choose ED1 if you're absolutely certain you want to go to a school and are willing to drop everything for it. If this is your dream school, if this is a school you've been thinking about going to ever since you were a little kid, that would probably be your early decision 1 school. And then I'd say choose ED2 if you're absolutely certain you want to go to a particular school and are willing to drop everything for it, but you'd also want some extra time to craft your application. The early decision 1 deadline is pretty early, as the name states, is in November 1st, most of the time. So if you want to sort of have that same binding decision, I'd say just apply ED2 if you want some extra time. And then early action. Early action is very similar to ED1 and 2, except it's non-binding. If you get in, you don't really have to go. So unlike other schools, you can also apply to other schools that you submitted an early action application, unlike early decision. This does change if you're applying to a school REA, which is restrictive early action, which means you can only apply to that school. Restrictive early action is only one school at a time, but it's not binding like early decision is. So I'd say sort of choose early action if you want to receive your decision earlier, but not be bound and still have the chance to apply to other colleges and be able to compare your different financial aid packages and see if you'd be a really good fit at that school or not. And then the last thing is just regular decision. So what is regular decision? Regular decision is oftentimes the most common decision pool / application round. This is probably the round that you'll apply to most schools with. You can apply to as many schools as you'd like to RD, and the RD deadline for almost every college is January 1st. Sometimes it's January 2nd, but it can change from school to school. In terms of whether you should choose regular decision or not, I'd say choose regular decision if you want more time to complete your application, essays and supplementals, and want to apply to multiple colleges at once without binding agreements. And this is really just sort of what you'll do for most schools. So you probably will have to apply to a school regular decision. So just keep that in mind. That is the conclusion of today's webinar. We'll sort of have time for questions now. I'll go ahead and stop the recording so